read a short passage from chapter 2, which is the morning I awoke in Brick's house and what happened after. I awoke the next morning with a sore back. My bed was lumpy and my pillows had a stuffing as splintered as breadcrumbs. It was among pickup trucks, a jeep, a snowmobile, kayaks, chairs, hockey sticks, a beer keg, and bottles and cans of beer and soda that Brick breakfasted every morning. Seated at a picnic bench, somehow also wedged into the garage. I can't start my day without a pack, and Jane doesn't allow smoking in the house, he explained to me. What do you want for breakfast? Beer or coffee? I declined both, opting instead for banana and orange to Brick's befuddlement. Brick, who clutched in one hand a cigarette and in the other hand a beer mug brimming with coffee, was wearing the same denim shirt he'd worn the previous night and also during the afternoon I'd spent at his office. The shirt, a stiff medium blue many years ago, was now pale, threadbare, and frayed, smudged with stains and splotches. It was still in good shape compared to his pants, however. Torn in the center of the seat, they offered an eyeful of polka dot boxers. I never knew where to look when talking to Brick. Let's go to the office and see if Paul has something for you to do, Brick said after he chugged a couple mugs of coffee. Paul was a stout, square-jawed man who'd worked for the Robertsons since he was 14, when Brick's father had hired him to work after school and in the summers. Brick, then 18, soon lost his father to a fatal accident, but he gained Paul, who soon became his best friend and the closest thing to a brother that he, an only child, had ever had. Today, at 50, Paul vacationed with the Robertsons annually, had lunch prepared by Jane daily, and was Uncle Paul to Brick and Jane's children permanently. Paul's responsibility was the egg-laying hen factory. He operated it from an expansive switchboard. The switchboard's knobs and buttons, when pushed or pulled, fed hens, created eggs, and dumped droppings. The switchboard did everything in fact except extract dead hens from cages, which was consequently Paul's first chore every morning. I helped him with it that morning, even though it was easier that morning than almost any other of the year. The hens were fresh flock, new stock, impounded into the equipment only a week earlier, clothed still in a complete coat of quilts. They had not yet pecked one another to the point of pink patches, unlike the batch of hens I'd seen the previous time. So that's a short passage. But one thing I forgot to mention, I realized before reading this passage, which I wanted to do is ask, what are some solutions? What do you guys think are some solutions to these problems? Can you throw something out there?
More vegetarian people.
Sorry?
More being vegetarian.
Yes.
Supply and demand. Supply.
Right, the market factor. It's all coming from that. So when we take account of the fact that our consumer decisions can have a big impact, that can be really powerful for the market. Vegetarian, like you are, or I am, or reducitarian, like George, these are really substantial steps that we can take. Even, a lot of people say to me, I could never be vegetarian. I tried it, I couldn't do it, and I can never do it. But even still, there's no reason for anyone to be eating animal products 3 times a day. Everyone can do something, whether it's reduce or eliminate. So that's very important. Any further thoughts?
To go back to an old way of farming where, it's not a factory anymore, but like an old farm with a few chickens and maybe a few animals and treat them more humanely. That's
Yes, definitely going back to a more traditional way of farming, treating the animals humanely. One thing I should mention, which your comment reminded me of, One chapter in my book is in Belize, where I stayed with Mennonite missionaries. And it was my first sort of very serious exposure to the culture and the community. It's a very traditional culture. And every way, including the profession farming, is selected to sort of separate from the world, to not have to go out into the world and the economy and such, and to sort of do your own thing. But their view and their attitude toward the animals was beautiful. They gave all their cows names there, and they really knew their personalities. Like I remember one day, this 18-year-old and I are feeding the cows, and every day she would make orange juice, and then she would give the peels to the cows, and they eat the peels. And she would sort of put syrup of molasses and all kinds of things on it. And she would say, oh, this cow really likes this, that cow doesn't. And she sort of knew like their preferences for orange peels, which was crazy to me, and was really great as well. So traditional farming, which often is derided today, or tradition in general is somewhat derided today, it can still play a very valuable role, and we can seek this out by going to farms ourselves, by going to farmers markets, by meeting the people themselves.
Actually, we grew up in East Africa.
Oh, okay.
That's where Kim got his first love of animals, and my father actually always kept a little, few ducks and hens and things like that. We had to cook for them. But it was the same thing, that he would go out and talk to them in the evening and pick up the eggs himself, and we would help him. And and then if people in the neighborhood didn't know what to do with their animals, they'd bring them to our house. So kind of grew up with that.
Yeah, that's why you became a vet. Sure, go ahead.
You unpack two questions. Can you can you imagine a situation, number one, where you treat the animals kind of ethically in a factory farm, and secondly, can you think of any way of having a so-called traditional farm that is economical? And I think these are two separate questions.
Yes. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. Because that's something I address for sure. So the second one, which I'll start with, is can we have a humane farm that's also economical? Because of course we can't expect farmers to do something that's going to lose them money, then they can't keep doing it. And I have gone to farms that are both. So I divide farms into categories, 4 categories based on 2 areas. One is the size of the farm, so you can view that as a sort of x-axis, like small to big. And I've seen everything from like 10 hens to 50,000. The other side is pastoral or industrial. And the main difference between these two is industrial would be indoors, factory style, pastoral would be having an outdoor component. So most farms today are large industrial. They're very big and they're very industrial. And the traditional farms were small pastoral. They were really small and they were pastoral. But now we also can have this category called large pastoral. And that's something I've seen once in the US, once in Canada. It's essentially, a lot of the cost effectiveness comes from scale, not just the style, but the scale. And so you can have a farm of 500 cows outside, on pasture. You can have hundreds of pigs outside on pasture, and it's still cost effective. It's not going to be the sort of rock bottom prices you get from factory farms, but it's definitely going to be something that's affordable, a little more expensive, but very much within the price point. So this large pastoral concept, I think, does really have potential. Some sort of new age farmers have been starting with this style. One factor that gets in the way of farmers is that the concepts of farming have actually been lost to a large extent in the current generation of farmers. A lot of, like Brick, for instance, he's a 4th generation farmer. and his father and his father and his father were all farmers, different kinds of animals, and they had a better sense of what animals are actually like. Like when you talk to factory farmers, they actually don't know anything about the animals. Like if you ask him, what do you think of hens? They don't know what are you talking about? Like what would I think of them? So that knowledge has been lost, but some farmers are actually regaining it, and they are sort of going back to nature. They have a big farm, it's making money, but it's outdoors, and they actually like it themselves. One thing I noticed about factory farmers, it's not that they love their farm, they hate it. They don't want to go in there. Like Rick never wanted to go in and see his hens ever. So they can have farms where they actually like it now and it's economical. I think I forgot the first part of the question. That always happens to me in two-part questions.
The first part of the question is, can you think of a factory farm, however you want to define it,
Okay.
where they are treated humanely?
Sure. So factory farm where they're treated humanely.
Is that a contradiction?
That's a contradiction.
Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah, I haven't come across that. Essentially what they're doing in the factory mindset is they're saying these are objects. We're gonna stuff them in like thousands in one building. And so that mindset and that concept makes it very difficult for them to have a humane life.
Okay, let me kind of add another question then.
Okay.
You're talking about, yes, certain farms can make it as kind of pastoral farms and still make money. They do that by increasing the price of the eggs or whatever. The question is that makes sense, but it only caters to a segment of the market, right? So the question becomes, on a large scale basis, as long as there is a market where people want to save $1 on a dozen of eggs, we're stuck with those factory farms. And so the question becomes, how do you go and create a pastoral farm that kind of becomes so economical and profitable that the factory farms lose their raison d'etre?
Sure, so that's a good question. So it's a sort of chicken and egg and demand and supply, like, yeah, no pun intended. The demand and supply sort of affect each other. So let's say someone's budget on animal products per week or whatever, let's just use a round number like $100. And they're spending this $100 to get X pounds of chicken and beef and put it in their fridge. Now, if they want to go the more humane route, there's two things they would be doing. One, they would be reducing the amount that they're consuming. So they would still spend $100. It's not like suddenly they have to increase their budget to $200. They're spending $100, but they're getting less of higher quality, better welfare, better environmental effects. So my point is, it's not like they're suddenly broke. It's not that they're unable to manage anymore. They're just, it's just a shift in mindset. And Brick himself pointed that out to me. He said people buy cars, they buy cell phones, and they buy all kinds of products, and they don't care how much they cost. But when it comes to eggs, everyone's now watching every cent. And we've gotten into this mindset of cheap food, that eggs are supposed to cost this X amount, and they cannot cost 50 cents more than that. Whereas on everything else, we spend more and more, and we spend generously. So it's a mindset issue as well. I wouldn't say that it's very, very doable to have large pastoral farms and have things that are affordable for people. And go ahead.
I have a question about which eggs I should buy. Originally,
I thought free range eggs were supposedly the best. Now I hear that really sort of enhanced environment cages are some of the best because free range chickens tend to kill each other, and then you have to modify their beaks so they don't peck each other to death, or else have machinery to break them apart when they start hanging up on other chickens and such. So now I'm confused because now free range is kind of, well, should I buy that or not? There's this enhanced environment stuff which looks okay, but it's sort of halfway between battery chickens and free range. So, you know, what do I do when I go to the supermarket?
So, how to pick between different choices. So the enhanced environment is often called enriched cages or enriched colony cages. And there are different kinds I've seen. Some are pretty much like a standard cage. They're just a little bit bigger and they put like a little stick in there that they call a perch. And that's considered an enriched cage, which it isn't. But it's sort of marketed as such. Another style which I saw at the Mennonite farm, which I haven't really seen otherwise, it's like a large coop and there's about 50 hens. Now the specking behavior of hens is pretty complex. So the way hens naturally are, they have a pecking order. It's like I'm number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3. And if that pecking order gets messed up, number 1 will sort of peck number 2 just as a reminder that, hey, you're out of line. And so they have, the hens can do that within their flock size of dozens. But when you go above 100 hens, there's no pecking order. It's chaos. Who's number 1, who's number 1,000, right? So that creates some confusion. But this enriched system, I'm not sure of a company that's supplying it effectively. In Canada, I've usually come across it as more of a sort of small cage, slightly bigger with a little branch in there. Free range, it's not, I would say it's better overall than this at this stage. I think the colony idea does have potential if it's done right. Unfortunately, more broadly, there's a lot of marketing that's false by the agriculture industry. I would go to websites and it says, oh, our cows are outside all year. And they're not outside a single day, but it says they're outside all year. And there's photos that are false, and it's just crazy how much of it is it's just made up and people believe it. And there doesn't seem to be much regulation of that. Even words like free run, free range, organic, they really need to be strictly defined and monitored. One issue with the Miller farm, I mentioned the cows were tied and it's an organic farm. The reason is that there's a loophole in Canadian organic regulations where you can define lactation as a stage of production, and based on that you can keep cows tied up.
Did these people, were they part of the milk marketing board? Did they have a quota?
Yes.
They did?
Yes.
Okay, because normally the farms that I've seen that are run as part of that quota system seem to be run on a more professional basis than what you're describing. Still get out and come back. It's just,
Most of the farms I went to in Canada were quota, so quota is a sort of supply management system. So I think that does have the potential to be good, because the way it has the potential is they can say my costs, I'm treating my animals better, my costs are higher, thus the prices are going to be higher. And you can have that margin.
Can I ask you a question? What about certifying you having ready to handle products?
In Canada?
Yeah.
So I haven't really investigated that specific certification.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. One company that I did go to several farms of in Ontario is Row Farms. Overall, I like Row Farms, and that's chapter 6 in my book. I met the farmer who's an Englishman who sort of designed the farms. At that time, there were about 14 or 15 farms. And it's done in the sort of large pastoral way. So, and just the way they sort of view the animals as animals. So
So I've been trying, like, I've been taking meat out of my diet. I very rarely eat meat.
Okay.
I've always been eating meat all my life, but
That's
I
great.
think it's last
big
year.
step.
Yeah, it's been huge. But the odd time, like if I have company over, I buy certified minimally raised and meat.
Okay.
And one thing I know about it is that they do get to go outside more frequently.
Okay.
There's vet care and stuff like that. Certain grocery stores will carry it, not all. Well, you have to go and look on it online for
Okay.
Broncos and Sobeys. But I just wanted to show you a little bit more about that type of branded meat and whether it's really true, because like you say, there's a lot of marketing stuff out there that
Yes.
throws you off, right? And I'm hoping that they are certified, that they are being raised humanely. And
I'm going to look into that again. I looked into several in the US, several labels, and a lot of them were sort of marketing
Right,
stamps, and they were done by industry to sort of promote industry products.
right,
There was a lawsuit against the egg industry in the US.
right.
I can't remember the exact label, but they were saying something like animal welfare food or something,
Right.
when everything was coming from cages. And then there was a lawsuit by an animal welfare group that this is clearly just garbage. There's nothing suggesting that there's any animal welfare here. And then they had to take off that specific label. But they're always trying to do something where, I mean, even if you go to KFC, you pass it by, Wendy's, like they all say outside, fresh, natural.
Right.
Fresh and natural have no definitions. So you can say, hey, this, glass of water is fresh and natural. You can say like anything's fresh and natural. And it means nothing, but people like the sound of fresh and natural. So they really feed into that.
This farm that you stayed at, was that here in Ontario, Canada?
Yes,
Yeah, it
these
was.
were these, both the ones that I mentioned, the dairy and the egg were in this area. No
Yeah.
fish, yes. Definitely. Sure, go ahead.
My question is about our view. When you say inhuman, that's obviously from our point of view.
Sure, okay.
A hen that's been reared since it came out of the egg had no other experience other than being in a cage with 5 others. Has anybody challenged you about that, being viewing it as inhuman? I'm being a devil's advocate here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So there is some science on that. When hens are let out of the cage, they want to forage. And so what happens in cages is hens get this disuse osteoporosis. Their bones become weak. They like physically not moving actually hurts their body. That's why they get this disuse osteoporosis. So even if hens are in a cage forever, like it is actually impacting their bodies. And these hens that I myself got, they've been in a cage, they got out, and they did not want to go back in.
I realize that, but are they in pain? I have arthritis.
Okay, I see what you mean. So I would argue that they are suffering. Science also suggests that hens are what scientists call counter-freeloaders. They're opposed to freeloading, so they don't want to eat food if it's right in front of them. So one thing that this farm did and that other farms do, the food belt is constantly moving. It's constantly moving because that stirs the hens to eat. That movement. Otherwise, if it's just sitting there, they don't really want to eat it. They like the idea of foraging. Hens are foragers. Actually, let me pose this question to the folks here. Who think that if they are reared in a cage and that's all that they know, they still suffer by being in that cage?
Absolutely.
Now you notice I didn't say cows, okay?
Okay.
Because I would surmise that cows have a higher level of brain power.
Okay.
Now, the hens are a bit below that.
So I would argue that
I'm saying a bit
Sure.
below that.
So,
Obviously, we can't apply the same thing to the caged salmon or tilapia. Why not? Because their biological level is such that they're not capable, or they have a different level of brain power than the higher forms of animals.
so here's what I've learned over time, and then we can open it up. Different animals have different levels and kinds of intelligence. More kinds than levels. And hens have their own intelligence, cows have their own intelligence, humans have our own intelligence. And now there are actually books on fish, including by someone I know, on fish thoughts and emotions and how fish work cooperatively, fish are social as well. I mean, more broadly, humans as a species, we really underestimated animals. And the more we're coming to learn about them, the more we're seeing that they're interesting, they're different than us, their intelligence is definitely different than ours, whether a dog or a cat. I mean, dogs and cats have different kinds of intelligence. Every animal has a different kind of intelligence. But we are learning that they have their own kind of intelligence, and more than that, they have their own emotions. I mean, back in the day, Charles Darwin said that animals feel at least 6 emotional states. Love, hate, fear, and disgust, and a couple others. And since then, overall, science has kept adding more and more emotional states to animals. Animals feel a lot of emotions, and whether it's attachment to their young, it's attachment to one another. Even on the note of the sort of subconscious, so this guy, Michael Miller, his cows are tied down, he said that sometimes you'll see a cow kicking her legs in a stall, or you'll see her suddenly get up. And he said, I think they're dreaming about being outside. They're definitely dreaming. And I mean, animals do dream, they have the subconscious. And it's not necessarily like our subconscious, it's not necessarily as language based, but the feelings do seem to be there. So I would sort of give the animals the benefit of the doubt, essentially, toward their emotional state. And I think my husband has a question too. Oh, and George. Oh, okay, I'm stopping.